This is Common Sense Radio. Straightforward and no excuses.
All right. Come on now.
This is the Steve Gruber Show.
Call me crazy.
Oh, yeah.
What I said was perfectly right and spot on accurate.
Boy's got a mouth like a cannon, always shooting it all.
Stop.
Got it.
Yeah, stop. I mean, you're way off script.
Got it in me. Gonna quit until it all comes out.
Hey, boy!
Long education.
Yeah, it's not cynical. It's common sense.
Pay attention to me when I'm talking to you.
I'm gonna rock the nation. Rock the nation.
Genuine, accountable, and raw. Here is Steve Gruber.
And welcome to it. It's Wednesday, my friends. Welcome to the Steve Gruber Show. I appreciate your support. The more information we get from different markets across the state, the more I realize that we're making some inroads out there. And we couldn't do this without your support, so we appreciate it. You, the listeners, making a difference here every day. And we're going to have some new affiliates to share with you here shortly. So for some of you folks that say, well, I can't get it where I am. Well, you're going to. Give us time. When we started this little adventure, we started with just 4 stations. So we're 4 times that now, just over, and so things are growing. But again, I say thank you to you, the listener, for making that possible. If you'd like to get involved with the program, the hotline number today is 888-900-9966, 888-900-9966. You can also check out stevegruber.com. On there, you can find the Listen Live button, so if you're going to work or somewhere else and you just want to listen live. You can also find podcasts, complete podcasts from, most recently the weekend events up at Mackinac Island, the Republican Leadership Conference, complete downloads of speeches from Ted Cruz, John Kasich, Governor Rick Snyder, and a whole host of others. So you can listen to presidential candidates, you can listen to the governor of Michigan, and it's all there on stevegruber.com. Click podcasts, and you're off to the races. Now today, speaking of podcasts you're going to want, Dr. Ben Carson will be joining me here later on the program. Dr. Ben Carson will be here in the state today, and we've been able to get him onto this program. Again, he's been here before. So Carly Fiorina last week, Ben Carson this week. We have the opportunity, fortunately, because of the listeners and the strength of our listeners, to have better guests on a more regular basis. So, again, I appreciate that as well. We'll get to the Ben Carson, Michigan visit here a little bit more in detail in a minute, but first let's start here. Federal investigators reportedly have recovered work-related and personal emails from Hillary Clinton's time as Secretary of State that the Democratic presidential frontrunner claimed had been deleted from her personal server, which I find shocking. I can't believe she wouldn't have told the truth. I mean, whoa. You tell me Hillary wasn't straight on this deal? It's weird. I get it. It's what I have been led to believe. The recovery of the emails, first reported by Bloomberg News late yesterday. The initial report, which cited a source familiar with the FBI investigation into Clinton's private email server, was corroborated by the New York Times, that bastion of conservative thought, which cited 2 government officials. The point that I'm making here, you've got Bloomberg, who's wildly left, and the New York Times, which is further left still, backing this up. It was not immediately clear, and usually defenders of Hillary Clinton. The protectorate. Hillary Clinton has her mainstream media protectorate. So there you go. It was not immediately clear whether all 30,000 messages Clinton said she had deleted from the server had been recovered, but one official told the Times that it had not been difficult to recover the emails that had been found so far. The FBI is investigating whether classified information that passed through Clinton's so-called homebrew server during her time as Secretary of State was mishandled. Clinton turned over approximately 30,000 copies of messages she deemed work-related to the State Department this past December. It's not getting better. Clinton said earlier this year that the email she deleted from the private server she kept in Chappaqua, New York, at her home there mostly pertained to personal matters like her daughter's wedding and secret yoga moves. Secret yoga moves. An intelligence source told Fox News earlier this month that investigators were confident they could recover the deleted records, and apparently they were right. The source said that whoever had been deputized to scrub the server must not be very good at it or not be a very good IT guy. There are different standards to scrub when you do it for government versus commercial, so very different. It is not known what exactly or when exactly Mrs. Clinton wiped her server, nor was the person directed to do it identified. However, it seems the move did come after October 2014 when the State Department requested personal emails be returned as part of her business records, and they panicked. Oh my God, I've got to return that. You see, that's where the big problem lies. When the State Department says we need this body of records, it's the law. And Hillary Clinton and her team turned around and said, well, we don't want them to have these things, so we'll just delete all of these. We will scrub the server. That's where the real problem lies, because that's when she crossed the line. The source saying that the FBI A-team is leading the extremely serious investigation into Clinton's server, and the focus includes a provision of the law pertaining to gathering, transmitting, or losing defense information. The section of the Espionage Act in question is known as 18 U.S. Code 793. When asked about the report, Clinton's presidential campaign spokesman Nick Merrill told Fox News that Clinton's team will always cooperate with the FBI. Yeah, you kind of do that, but it's not what they want to do, I guarantee you that. And that Clinton and her staff simply don't know what the FBI has, doesn't have in regard to the ongoing investigation. Ed Henry said Tuesday that should the report of the newly recovered emails prove true, some of the emails recovered would already be in the investigators' hands. That's right. In fact, all of them would be in the investigators' hands, I believe. A separate source, who also was not authorized to speak on the record, said the FBI will further determine whether Hillary Clinton should have known, based on the quality and detail of the material, that the emails passing through her server contain classified information regardless of the markings. It was her job to know. The campaign's standard defense and that of Clinton is that she never sent nor received any email that was marked classified at the time. Well, that's not going to fly either, because as Secretary of State, you have to know what rises to that level that requires special handling. Oh, where is Joe Biden? Oh, there he is. Joe's coming. There's Joe Biden. He won't be here too long. He's on his way. It's Wednesday. Ben Carson on his way a little bit later, too. Here on the Steve Gruber Show.
Getting your day started with news from around the state and around the world. Common Sense Radio. This is the Steve Gruber Show.
If you don't like what you see here, nobody wants to take your prisoner. So let me make it nice and clear there. The exit is right there.
Yeah, we must be doing something right here to get Dr. Ben Carson on the program. I believe he's going to be in Spring Arbor today. Is that where he's off to? Dr. Ben Carson coming to Michigan today. Well, you know, here's something of interest for you. Dr. Ben Carson's fundraising has spiked, increased, rocketed up since his comments about not supporting a Muslim to be president of the United States. The super PAC supporting Carson for the Republican presidential nomination has seen a surge of donations. Since his appearance this past Sunday on NBC's Meet the Press, where Carson said he would not advocate for a Muslim to be president of the United States. We sent out an email to Carson supporters, and we've never had an email raise so much money so quickly. It is unbelievable, said John Philip Sousa IV, who chairs the 2016 committee Super PAC. My phone has exploded with people wanting me to pass on to Dr. Carson how much they respect his honesty and belief in the American system, and how absolutely not anyone who believes in Sharia law should come to the White House. Absolutely not. The people are on Dr. Carson's side on this one. Sorry, NBC. Sorry, Chucky Todd, for your ridiculous question. It was a ridiculous question, by the way. Well, what if this, and then what if that, and then really? We could play that stupid sort of game all the time. How about this? We're $18 trillion in debt. We've got a former Secretary of State who was apparently passing state secrets around on her private email servers that nobody even knew about. And you want to ignore that, and you want to come up with some, what if a Muslim was ever nominated to be president? Well, why don't we deal with that when it actually happens, which will be never. We'll ask Dr. Carson about that here a little bit later today when he's on the program. And I'll bet we ask better, more relevant questions than Chucky Todd. Chuck Todd is just another stooge in the wheel. I used to work at NBC News. Trust me, I can say any damn thing I want about those folks. NBC, you know what they used to say inside, the people in the newsroom? You know what NBC stands for? Nothing but crap. And Chuck Todd's behavior seems to cover a lot of that. It's the gotcha of national politics. It has little to do with the issues at hand. Has little to do with what this country needs to do to right itself on the national stage and right itself when it comes to domestic policies. No, instead, people like Chuck Todd sit here and play games like this so they can go pat themselves on the back because they're narcissistic little pigs. You know, it would be nice if they did the work of the people. If they went out, it would be nice if, as journalists of the Fourth Estate, they actually did things that would benefit the people, like, ask questions. Press President Obama when he makes foolish decisions like the Iran deal. It would be nice when the president backs up people like Ahmed Muhammad and then has a backfire that nobody ever presses a question on. Who's Ahmed Muhammad, you ask? Well, let me tell you. He is the Texas high school freshman who got national headlines last week when his homemade clock was mistaken for a bomb by teachers. Now it could be causing a headache for the White House because the president stood up and backed him publicly. Others are now questioning what the motives really are in the case. You see, 14-year-old Ahmed Muhammad's father has said he now plans to withdraw the freshman from MacArthur High School and said earlier this week they intend to visit New York City to meet with dignitaries at the United Nations and then make a pilgrimage to Mecca. So it's just all coincidence. This kid shows up, gets thrown out of school for what looks to be a homemade bomb. And then he's on, because, when I was a freshman in high school, my parents sure would whisk me off to, New York to meet with dignitaries of the United Nations because we had that kind of connection. Really? Who has this kind of connection? Think about it. Oh, and then, by the way, we're going on to Mecca. Really? Going on your pilgrimage. This all from the Dallas Morning News, by the way. It's not clear which dignitaries had requested a meeting with Muhammad, but you can probably whittle down the list a little bit. Muhammad had received praise and support from people like Barack Obama and Facebook's CEO Mark Zuckerberg, another political genius, in the wake of the incident in which Muhammad was arrested on bomb hoax charges after bringing the device to school. However, amid huge support online for the family, there also has been growing criticism and doubts about the motive behind the incident. You see, Muhammad claims to have built this clock. It was a hand-built clock, he claims. Well, not exactly. Evolutionary biologist Richard Dawkins linked to a video posted on YouTube by electrical expert Tom Talbot, which closely scrutinizes a photo of the controversial clock. In the video, Talbot argues the clock is actually a commercial alarm clock removed from its casing and then torn down. Features of the clock, such as printed circuit boards and ribbon cables, are indicative of a manufactured product. The kid lied. So if that's true, you have to ask yourself, what was the kid's motive? The kid's dad. Well, he has a colorful history of his own. Mohammed El-Hassan Mohammed. Why don't they just go Mohammed? That'd be a better name. Easier. M3. M-Cube. And announced in February that he planned to run for president of the Sudan, as he did back in 2010. So let me get this clear. The kid's dad ran for president in the Sudan 5 years ago. He's going to do it again. And he just happens to bring a dismantled clock to school. Yeah, Bill Maher isn't buying it either. Yeah. Maher, a left-wing comedian, expressed skepticism, saying the people at the school thought it might be a bomb, perhaps because it looked exactly like an effing bomb. Thank you, Bill Maher, for being right once in a while.
The Steve Gruber Show. American values with Midwestern common sense.
33 after the hour on this Wednesday. How far will we go for you to get you the story? Well, just about to the ends of the earth. Right now, Russia and Iran are seen coordinating on defense of the Assad regime in Syria, coming to his defense military bases being put together, it appears, Russian military bases, and an armed division of Russian soldiers putting their boots on the ground to defend Assad in Syria. Well, how far will we go? Well, this morning we'll go live to Kiev, where Todd Wood, a journalist for the Washington Times and a regular contributor here on the program, is today. Todd, welcome aboard.
Hey, Steve. Thanks for having me back on. Appreciate it.
Pretty good connection for you being in Ukraine.
It's not bad. Kiev is a international city, so the infrastructure is pretty good in this part anyway.
Well, let's start with, how long you been there?
I just got here last night. I was in Moscow for about 2 weeks prior to this.
All right, so here's, I guess, my first question is this. What is the mood, I suppose, in Ukraine, in Kiev, in Russia? What is the general sense of things when it comes to Russia, targeting Ukraine? Obviously, they already took the Crimea. There's been a lot of stories about Russian military massing on the border. Obviously, the Syrian thing we'll get to in a second. But first, let's just the mood of Russia, the mood of Ukraine in this ongoing conflict.
Well, Ukraine is obviously still very nervous and apprehensive as to what's going on in the east. They are concerned that even though the conflict has seemed to die down somewhat as Russia has entered Syria, that, it's not a long-term fix. Poroshenko did say, the president did say that, we're inching our way towards peace, and I think they want that. But there's a big problem in Ukraine with a lot of the nationalist forces who are not happy with the peace agreement, and they want East Ukraine back. So that's Ukraine. But in Russia, the focus is on the economy, and living standards are getting worse for people by the day. So I think that has a lot to do with what Putin just did in Syria and trying to keep the public's eye off their domestic troubles.
So for the average Russian then, it is a vast country. For the average Russian, they probably have no interest or very little interest in what the Russian military is doing. They're probably trying to figure out how to get bread on the table for the evening.
Oh, that's exactly right. The average person now, even in wealthy Moscow, makes only $500 a month. There is extreme wealth. There's more billionaires anywhere in Moscow concentrated, I think, than most places. So there's extreme wealth, but there's also a huge kind of lower middle class. So you're right, people are just worried about eating. Medical care is huge. They've reduced a lot of the services there, which I've mentioned before. But, Ukraine really only comes into play if your son goes there and gets killed or get his legs blown off or whatever. So the mothers have been, I guess, raising their head as they did in the Afghanistan conflict, trying to find out where their sons are, where they were killed, if they were killed, are they alive, where they're buried, that kind of thing. The government keeps all that very quiet.
What is the sense that you get then Vladimir Putin. Obviously, on this side of the planet, a lot of discussion about Putin rising, Putin trying to rebuild the former Soviet Union, the empire, if you will, of the Russian Empire, if you will. A lot of sense of that. What is your feeling
about the Russian people's thoughts on Putin, or my thoughts on Putin?
Both. I'll take both, actually.
I think Putin is a master of the global chessboard. He's been at this for decades. He is, he's a czar. He's not a communist anymore. He does want the Russian Empire rebuilt, and he's done so. You've seen that he's taking little bits of the world at a time. Transnistria, South Ossetia, Crimea, East Ukraine, now parts of Syria, and that will continue until he's forced to stop. So I don't think Obama's even on the same planet as Putin. And Kerry, obviously, I saw a quote yesterday that Kerry said that the Russian forces in Syria are only there for force protection. Just think about that statement for a minute. But as far as the Russian people's thoughts of Putin, they are starting to hurt. I've heard a little bit of, Putin is stealing. That's all he cares about is his own money. So, the approval rating there is high, but there's a fragility to that could drop at any point, and that's again why I think he's in Syria.
They do like him though for the bravado, it seems, in Russia. So okay, let's look at Syria here for a moment. Obviously, with the Russians putting an armed division in there, building military bases, it seems the Russians are going to be in Syria for a long time, for the foreseeable future. And then, of course, the Iran deal and the other things that are going on in the Middle East. It seems to me that Putin is planting a flag that makes them the major player, the major power working in the region, and no longer the United States. Am I right or wrong?
No, you're completely correct. Yes, he filled the vacuum left by Barack Obama, and there's no doubt about that. And you're right, they will have a presence there. Syria's been literally an ally of Russia for decades. I mean, the Soviets back in the 70s, almost worshipped the Assad regime because it gave them a foot in the the Mediterranean, obviously the Middle East. Yes, and Assad's not going anywhere. I guess it's possible if Putin could force him out in some kind of, diplomatic, gift to the West, but to try to get something else. But at the end of the day, Russia's not going anywhere.
So what is your focus on this trip? I mean, obviously you're writing for the Times, for the Washington Times. What is your focus? What are you looking for story-wise?
I've got three areas on this trip. First one is the anti-corruption efforts here in Ukraine. I mean, it's a very corrupt country, and they're trying to do something about it at the prodding of the IMF and the EU and the White House, and kind of what the status is on that. Second is I'm going to Mariupol, which is down on the coast, which is right in the smack dab in the middle of the land bridge Putin wants to Crimea. So I think that situation is fascinating. And I also am meeting with the central bank here to find out what's happening with the debt agreement and really how the country's finances are going forward. So
what about Ukraine? I mean, the president there, he's been in office a year? I don't pay a lot of attention. He's the chocolate billionaire, right?
Yeah, he's an oligarch. He's lost a lot of wealth because Russia seized a lot of his properties in the east and in Crimea. So, he's not as powerful wealth-wise as he used to be. But, Ukraine's an oligarchy. I mean, there's several people that run the country. There's one guy, Akhmetov, who basically plays both sides here, the East and the West, but makes money at the same time. So it'll be interesting to see if that changes. Ukraine wants to be European, at least the West does. The East does not. So, I think eventually there'll be some kind of split. I don't think the government in Kiev can actually govern the East to any effective level.
So big changes on the way for Ukraine, no matter what happens here. We're on the line with Todd Wood, journalist from the Washington Times, live from Kiev in the Ukraine this day. Todd, how long are you there? I'll give you about 20 seconds for the last word.
I'll be here for about a week. You'll be able to see my articles at the Washington Times. I'll also be on Newsmax TV tomorrow evening at 5:15, 5:12, I think, which I'm on there weekly. But, I'll be here about a week.
What an interesting and fascinating trip it must be. I appreciate your time, Todd Wood, regular contributor, and we'll certainly talk to you and wrap this thing up when you get back. When you get back to the United States. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Steve. Take care. Bye.
There you have it. Todd Wood live from Kiev in the Ukraine. Where else but the Steve Gruber Show? Tell your friends. We'll be right back.
The Steve Gruber Show. American values with Midwestern common sense.
I pulled into Nazareth, was feeling about half-past dead. I just need some place where I can lay.
It's 45 after on this Wednesday. Pope Francis here in the United States. A lot of us waiting to see what he has to say. Many of his comments as of late have been, not favorable to capitalism in the United States, to say the least. We'll wait to see what the pontiff has to say about that, if he's going to stray into politics like he has done a few times in recent weeks and months. Joseph Castleberry is here with us, our next guest, the author of The New Pilgrims, How Immigrants Are Renewing America's Faith and Values. Sir, welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you for having me, Steve.
Well, lay out your premise here. I'm thinking we may not agree across the board here, but go ahead and lay out your premise, and then we'll discuss it.
All right, I appreciate the opportunity to do that. The name of the book is The New Pilgrims, How Immigrants Are Renewing America's Faith and Values. And we can start with explaining what that title means. The New Pilgrims, by saying that, I'm saying that today's immigrants, not all of them, I'm not talking about every immigrant that comes to the country, but a huge percentage of today's immigrants are very devout, religious people. About 70% of the immigrants that are coming to America right now are Christians. About 20% of them have no faith at all. That matches America as a whole. So the percentage is about the same as those that are already here. But the ones who are Christians tend to be more devout than native-born Americans. And they are planting churches all across the country. They are renewing the population of the current churches that are here, and they're lifting American religion. That's not what I mean by saying that they're renewing America's faith. I can come back to that later. But when
that's fine. Well, where is this happening, Joseph? Because the fact of the matter is, in survey after survey, the number of Americans, the people living here, faith, Christian faith, all faiths for that matter, are receding and have been for some period of time. And right now we're at the lowest percentage of Christian Americans we've had probably in the nation's history.
That's absolutely true. We are losing about 1% of the national population each year. We're down 8% in the last 8 years. Obviously, if that continues, the America that we have known will not continue. America's population has historically been majority Christian, and there's no question that faith is declining in America, and faith in America is declining with it precisely because of the argument I'm making about America's faith. But back to what I was saying about the immigrants, they are very comparable to the Pilgrims who came to Massachusetts in 1620. You know, in school, we were all taught that the Pilgrims came for religious freedom, and that's true. The Pilgrims in 1620 did want religious freedom, but they had religious freedom in Holland before they came here. They had left England and had found a safe home for their faith in Holland, but what they didn't have there was economic opportunity. And when they crossed that ocean to come to America and risk everything, and of course many of them did die here pretty quickly as they came to harsh and difficult circumstances, they did that because they wanted economic prosperity. They wanted an opportunity to thrive.
Well, everybody wants that now, but the fact of the matter is America, because we're $18 trillion in debt, doesn't have the opportunity with the regulations and the rules and the guidelines and the taxes that are going through the roof. We don't have the opportunities we once had. And the good news is, Joseph, that we don't teach about the Pilgrims in school anymore. We don't have time. We have to teach about diversity and other really important liberal thoughts as opposed to teaching kids about the Pilgrims. But they used to teach about such things. Go on.
Well, I'm with you on this stuff. 100%, Stephen. So anyway, these immigrants compare very well to the ones that came to Massachusetts. They are devout. They are optimistic. They are hopeful. And they're not like a lot of native-born Americans who stand around complaining about how they can't succeed anymore. These folks have come to succeed. Immigrants who come to our country are 50% more likely to start new businesses and become entrepreneurs than native-born Americans are. The Cato Institute says that immigrants coming to the United States create more jobs than they actually take up. I was in a Mexican restaurant in Jasper, Alabama here recently, a little town where my mother was born, and there was a Mexican restaurant there started by Mexican immigrants to the United States a few years ago, a big chain of them now in the southeast. And I'm a Spanish speaker, and I had to look all over the place to find somebody in the restaurant that spoke Spanish. Most of the employees were native-born Americans, were dressed up in Mexican outfits, serving Mexican food at the restaurant. It was a kind of a funny situation, but nevertheless.
That's all fine. Well, but here's the thing: you say that
everything from Google and eBay, which were founded by immigrants, all the way down to a local taco stand.
Well, and I don't disagree with some of your points. However, the fact of the matter is a lot of these, you say that it's contributing to our churches, families, schools, politics, and the economy. Yes, in some ways, but in those other ways, it's a massive drain on the economy because social systems cannot take on millions of new people. It's politically, it's swinging the pendulum, and if the Democrats had their way, they'd have all sorts of illegal people voting. That's already been proven to be true in Washington, D.C., and in California, you have illegal aliens on board serving in California and so forth. So there's certainly a downside to it. I don't disagree with you. There's some real positives. I'll give you 15 seconds for the last word, sir.
Well, as we watch these immigrants, we will see that immigration is still doing the same thing it always has, that immigrants help us see America with new eyes. If we're born here, we often can't see the subtle glories of the American system. But these folks who are coming out of oppressive situations and difficult paths are coming to America, and freedom looks awfully good to them. They can tell us again what it looks like.
Well, maybe they can do that and keep us off this path to socialism and Marxism. That'd be a good plan. Joseph Castleberry, thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve.
The book is The New Pilgrims, How Immigrants Are Renewing America's Faith and Values.